Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies. And in today's episode, have the Phils misjudged the catcher's market, or are they comfortable with their current position? We'll discuss as we break everything down.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic, doing sports talk radio here in Philadelphia for 5 years. This is my fourth year as the host of Locked On Phillies, as we're now into 2025. And I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 3 seasons. Going to make it 4 coming up when the Phillies start their 2025 season. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, hitting that subscribe button on the YouTube channel. If you haven't checked us out on YouTube, please do so. And please hit that subscribe button. It'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted. It's also a great way to help us out here on Locked On Phillies. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Now, something that we brought up earlier on in the offseason, but we haven't really, to use one of those overused office terms, circled back on, has been the catcher position, because JT Realmuto had a rough year in 2024. And part of the reason was injury, and he had to do a midseason surgery, the arthroscopic knee surgery that he got done. But he wasn't great when he came back, and you're kind of at the point in his career where you have to say, well, is he an everyday, all-the-time catcher at the major league level? And even like prime JT Realmuto needed a day off here or there, but he's a guy that likes to be out there more often than most catchers in baseball. It's a very taxing position, and you're looking at a situation where we've discussed, is it best for JT Realmuto to reduce the amount of innings that he's got to play? And the answer to that we came to, or at least that I came to in discussion with myself, was yes. It seems like it would be in the best interest of the Philadelphia Phillies for JT Realmuto to have less playing time in 2025. Not completely sit him down, but just like mitigate the playing time so that his time on the field is more effective. He doesn't get burnt out as fast. He's more valuable in the postseason rather than burnt out from a long season. All this seems to make sense. So the question was, who is that guy? And I said, well, it's probably not Garrett Stubbs. Like, probably not Garrett Stubbs. If you're listening, Phillies, it's probably not Garrett Stubbs. And what the Phillies did was they tendered a contract to Garrett Stubbs when they had that deadline to do so. So Stubbs is going to be back in some capacity with the organization. But what that doesn't mean is that he's going to be the backup catcher. He could be a minor league guy. He could be a guy that they move before spring training. Like, there's no guarantee that Garrett Stubbs is the backup just because the Phillies tendered him a contract. But the thing that I thought about was, okay, well, you could sign somebody else, a veteran backup, to play alongside Realmuto, to split time, maybe play once every other, or like every 4 or 5 games, and just get him out there to play. And then I looked at the backup catcher's market. So here are the players available. Shout out to Spotrac, by the way, for always having these updated free agent trackers. You ever want to look around on Spotrac for contract information, who's available, all this stuff, they've got great information. And I was looking today at the catchers that are available with previous major league experience in free agency this year. Now, there may be minor league guys you can trade for. There may be other guys you can find in the margins, but these are the guys that are the remaining major league experience catchers. And there's only 6 of them. The names from top to bottom here, going from most valued to least valued: James McCann, Luke Maile, Yasmani Grandal, Kurt Casale, Elias Diaz, and Martin Maldonado. Those are the guys that you have available. Now, here's the problem with those guys. One, none of them are under the age of 33, and even at 33, Luke Maile, he's turning 34 in a month. Pretty much. So you're looking at a situation where all these guys are 34 or older. That's not exactly the type of guy that you can expect to play a significant amount of time for your baseball team. These are all over the hill guys too. Ideally, you'd want 28, 29, 30-year-old guy that's been at the major league level a little bit, that's going to play and develop behind JT Realmuto. Now, if you're saying the Phillies might have that guy, you may be right. But We'll get to that in a second. If you're interested in any of those names, I mean, none of those guys had over a .76 WAR. Two of those guys had negative WARs. Or I'm sorry, Diaz had a 1.18 WAR with the San Diego Padres last year. But like even that, it's not like these guys are making major impacts. No one else was over one. Two of the guys, Mel and Maldonado, were negative. I mean, there's not a lot of talent there. That it just doesn't really seem to be a option that the Phillies are going to go out and use. None of those guys really feel like they fit. I mean, I guess you could get a guy like Yasmani Grandal, who had been on the Pittsburgh Pirates this past year and has had a long major league career and a 36. He could probably play once a week or once every other week. I don't know. None of these feel like great options to me when I look at the guys available in free agency is what I'm trying to say. And those are the names. There's nobody else out there with major league experience that is available in free agency. That is basically the whole list. So if the Phillies are not going to exercise any of those options, what do they do? And to me, I think that leaves them with one option, because if they trot Garrett Stubbs back out there to be the backup catcher for the Philadelphia Phillies in 2025, this fan base is going to have a meltdown. Mark my words. We're going to have a meltdown here in Philadelphia. I've told you already, like, trust me, I don't think Garrett Stubbs is going to be the backup catcher. They tendered him a contract. Everybody lost their mind. I said, whoa, whoa, whoa. That doesn't mean he's their backup. He could be in the minors. Give it a little bit. If by the time we roll around to spring training, I'll be as annoyed as you. And I stand to my word on that. I don't think Stubbs is going to be the backup catcher. I will be that annoyed if he is the backup catcher. But if you're going in-house, you only have one other option. Logan O'Hoppe is no longer a part of the organization. We know this. He was traded away a couple of years ago to the Los Angeles Angels. You are looking at a situation where you have one option in-house outside of Garrett Stubbs. And the funny thing about this one option in-house, while I'm kind of treating it as like this reserve option that doesn't seem to really fit as well as, I don't know, this hypothetical free agent catcher that would fit into the Phillies' plans better. The guy that you have in-house might actually be the guy that would fit this bill, and that is Rafael Marchand. Now, I don't know how excited the fan base would be about Rafael Marchand as the backup catcher. Speaking of how excited the fan base will be, we're going to talk about in our off the poll responses how excited you are about the possibility Alec Bohm could be moved. And we're also going to talk later on in this episode. I realized I didn't give you a heads up of what we're getting into. Some interesting stuff on Brandon Marsh from MLB Network that we have to discuss. That says a lot about a lot of things. But anyway, back to the catcher position. I don't know if this fan base is going to be like overly excited if the Phillies say, yeah, Rafael Marchand, you're our backup catcher. At the major league level, he's a career .279 hitter. Pretty darn good. 5 home runs, 31 hits, and 111 at-bats, a 1.2 WAR. He's not plus defensively, but nobody is compared to JT Realmuto. I can tell you what, Garrett Stubbs does boast a pretty solid pop time, which is something that you look at defensively, and he's got familiarity with some of the pitchers in the rotation. But Rafael Marchand has shown he's the significantly better offensive player in a small sample size, but we haven't really gotten a huge sample size from Garrett Stubbs in his time with the Philadelphia Phillies either. He made his debut in 2020, Marchand did. He's showed up in 2021 for a little bit. Then 2 and 3, he didn't come up at all. And then this past year, he played in 17 games, 56 plate appearances, splitting time with Garrett Stubbs when JT Realmuto had that knee surgery. And now at 25, turning 26 in just about 2 months, is Rafael Marchand, who we'll just call it 26 for the 2025 season. Is he ready to take on a every week role with the Philadelphia Phillies, like once every week, basically what Garrett Stubbs did last year? Are you in a better spot with Rafael Marchand as that guy? Switch hitter, so you don't really lose that lefty bat on the bench, which it was nice to have with Stubbs at a position where you don't normally see lefties. I frankly, as I look at the guys available and I look at what Rafael Marchand has done and I hear what the organization has said generally about him, I know there are concerns about him defensively. I know that there are concerns about him in a bigger sample size, but 25 turned to 26, young enough that you could develop him. healthy enough that he could play, talented enough he shouldn't kill you, and frankly, he gives you a better chance than Garrett Stubbs. So I think this is the year that Rafael Marchand becomes the backup catcher for the Philadelphia Phillies. That is my thought. And while the Phillies might have missed the catcher market when it comes to free agency, they may have done so on purpose, believing that Marchand was the guy all along. I hadn't really looked into that possibility as much as I probably should have. And now when I look at those numbers and I see what they could potentially get out of a guy and the age and the fact that he has some major league experience with this team and he's caught some of these pitchers before, it just feels right that Stubbs goes to the minors or gets moved, and Rafael Marchand ends up being a guy that makes a 26-man roster. Now, we're not starting our 26-man roster projections yet. It is way too early to do so. That'll be something that we begin to do once spring training rolls around. But for the time being, looks like Marchand has a pretty darn good shot unless they bring in one of those guys, those names we were talking about, none of which I really moved the needle for me. At least any more than Rafael Marchand. You already have him under team control, so why would you go pay money for something that you already have at home? It's like your parents when they say, yeah, no, we're not getting McDonald's. We got food at home. Like, and you're a little sad about it because you want something new and you want the feeling of going through that drive-through. But you get home and you're like, as a parent, you realize, hey, I already spent money on this. My kid's going to eat it. That might be what Rafael Marchand is for Philadelphia Phillies fans this year. And, hey, maybe we get something out of it. Maybe we get a surprising season out of Rafael Marchand that makes you feel better about the future of the Philadelphia Phillies catcher position. Coming up next, kind of wild that this came out on Tuesday because this whole ranking of Major League center fielders came out from MLB Network. And we had just had a conversation last episode about who the starting center fielder for the Philadelphia Phillies should be. Well, Brandon Marsh was on this list, and he was higher than a lot of people thought he should have been. We'll talk about why, how, and what exactly it is as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Let's talk about Rocket Money first, though, because Rocket Money is the absolute best. They're a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings all of that together in one place. So whether it's subscriptions, or your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Listen, resolutions time, we're still here. I'm sure you haven't given up on your resolutions yet. And if your resolution is to save more money, you should never give up on that. Rocket Money will help you with it. They have over 5 million users and have saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. So for me, I love it because I've got all these subscriptions that I don't keep track of at all. Maybe it's something for work. Maybe it's a TV channel that I don't use anymore. Maybe it's a gym membership and I go to the gym in my apartment now. I actually do have that. I should probably, whatever. There's a lot of things I have to take care of, and Rocket Money helps me do so. You should use Rocket Money as well because it helps you get that all set up. Plus, you can set up their goals feature, which helps you financially plan out the goals that you want for the next week, month, year, all of that stuff. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. rocketmoney.com/locked-on. All right, so I'm going to try my absolute best. I'm going to try my hardest. I promise. You have my word that I'm going to do everything in my power to not make this an I told you so segment. Because I could. A lesser podcast host would go, nah, I told you so. I knew this was going to happen. You guys all were mad at me, blah, blah, blah. And I did put out a tweet when I did see this list for the first time, kind of saying, I did say this guy was good, but I'm going to break this down as logically and as fairly as I can based on how I truly evaluate Brandon Marsh. So MLB Network on Tuesday put out their top 10 center fielders right now. And there are a lot of things to take away from this list and a lot of things pertaining to the Philadelphia Phillies. Number 1 on this list was Julio Rodriguez with the Seattle Mariners. Makes absolute sense. Number 2, Jackson Merrill with the San Diego Padres. Nice player. Top 2 in a position in the sport. Already you're getting this kind of alarm bells going off in the back of your head. And that's not a knock on Jackson Merrill. It's just where's the superstar power? Byron Buxton's at 3. He could probably be higher if it wasn't for injuries and inconsistency. Michael Harris at 4. He probably should be higher. Mike Trout at 5. Again, injuries, all of those issues. So Mike Trout trailing Julio Rodriguez, Jackson Merrill, Byron Buxton, Michael Harris is not something you could have told me 3 or 4 years ago and I would have believed you. But I would not believe even today who's next on the list. Mike Trout at 5. Brandon Marsh is 6th on this list, just behind Mike Trout, just ahead of Dalton Varsho for the Toronto Blue Jays. The rest of the list, Garrett Mitchell in Milwaukee, O'Neill Cruz in Pittsburgh, Luis Robert Jr. For the Chicago White Sox. So Brandon Marsh is 4 spots above Luis Robert Jr., who the Phillies apparently were interested in trading for, or at least were kicking the tires on ahead of the deadline, and was one of the big major assets available at the deadline via the Chicago White Sox that nobody ended up trading for. This says a lot of things. So first of all, the list is just that. It's a list. It's not the players. It's not stats. It's not this definitive end-all, be-all, well, this is what it's got to be. This is a list that MLB Network has put together based on opinions of either staff writers or one particular writer or however they compiled this list. So it's not an exact science. There is opinion that gets roped into this. So if you look at this and you say, see, this proves my point, well, it proves that someone else has a similar opinion to you. It does not prove your point exactly. So I'm not taking this as like this great win of I said Brandon Marsh is good. People have told me the guy stinks. I've defended him. And now all of a sudden I'm right because this list comes out. No, that wouldn't be fair. So I'm not going to take that approach. What I will say is seeing the names on this list, Rodriguez, Jackson Merrill, Byron Buxton, Michael Harris, Mike Trout, Brandon Marsh, Dalton Varsho, Garrett Mitchell, O'Neill Cruz, Luis Robert Jr. Whatever place you put those 10 players in, you could argue that Brandon Marsh is in like the Garrett Mitchell, Dalton Varsho kind of category, right? I mean, I might put the upside of O'Neill Cruz over. Luis Robert, his upside is definitely higher, but there are questions about his defense and everything like that. I look at it and I say Brandon Marsh is not out of place on the list. He's out of place at 6th, I think. That's a little high. But anyone who's looking at this guy and saying, well, he stinks, he's not a Major League Baseball player, he's terrible, you're flat out wrong. You're just incorrect. You're misevaluating him as a player. He has offensive upside if he can cut down on the strikeouts. He's shown a little bit of pop. He plays solidly above average defense to the point where he was a Gold Glove nominee in left field last year. He's a good baseball player. Brandon Marsh, above average Major League Baseball player. Now, he had a below average year, and that was the strikeouts last year. And I understand why that's an issue, and it's something he's got to correct. And I'm not guaranteeing that Brandon Marsh is going to be an all-star or anything like that. But I will say that, like, the dude is a good outfielder. He is. He's an above-average outfielder. If you don't believe me, if you're not ready to come around on that, I don't know, hop on the train before it's too late because I believe this with all of my heart that Brandon Marsh is a good baseball player. That might sound like a pretty low bar to clear, but some people think the guy flat out stinks. But it also, this list shows something. And there was a guy who tweeted this at me. I want to pull this up because I want the exact name because I want to give credit to the person who tweeted this at me. John Sobolewski tweeted this at me when I tweeted about Brandon Marsh being 6th on the list. And he said, this just shows you how weak overall the position is in Major League Baseball. And John is absolutely fairly evaluating this. Like, you look at the fact that the names on this list, like Jackson Merrill is 2, Brandon Marsh is 6, Varsho is 7, Garrett Mitchell is 8. Like, there's not a lot of center field talent in Major League Baseball right now. There's not these premier guys. I mean, if you look at like right fielders, if you look at left fielders, the guys in the corners, look at first base. I mean, look at the shortstop position. There are some bona fide Major League crazy great players at a lot of positions. And center field is one of those where it's just like, okay, there's not that much amazing talent at the center field position. Second base is kind of another one right now. If you did the top 10 second baseman, Bryson Stott would probably be 7th or 8th. There's a couple positions, and this is how it always goes, right? It's just the ebbs and flows of baseball. You're not going to have stars at every single position all across the board. It just doesn't happen. There's going to be weaknesses at some positions for whatever reason. But it shows the Philadelphia Phillies, right? If you're looking to go out and acquire another outfielder to play center for your baseball team, you're not really looking at a lot of options. It's not like there's this wealth of talent at the center field position. And this is part of getting caught up too much in what the Philadelphia Phillies don't have, instead of being thankful for what the Philadelphia Phillies do have. And I'm not trying to shun the fan base saying, you ungrateful blanks. No, I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying, like, sometimes we get so caught up with, well, Brandon Marsh doesn't look good enough. Well, look around at who everybody else has. Like, there aren't really that many better center fielders in baseball because there aren't that many really good center fielders in baseball. The fall off of Mike Trout made sure of that. I mean, the fall off of Byron Buxton made sure of that. They don't exist. It also shows that Yohan Rojas, if he can figure out offensively, could probably be on this list within a year or two. If he did what he did in 100 at-bats in 2023 and hit like 300, which, I mean, that's a big if. But, like, there's room for people to get onto this list who aren't already. So this isn't like a lock that Brandon Marsh is your center fielder. This also isn't like a lock that he's a top 6 guy at his position in baseball because, again, it's just opinionated, but it shows you two things. One, Brandon Marsh is probably better than we think. Two, there are not a lot of options out there for the Philadelphia Phillies in center field if they decide that they want to continue to add or retool the outfield this offseason. So that makes me feel more confident that unless there's a trade and Alec Bohm is moved for an outfielder in some capacity, there's probably not going to be a major move to the outfield the rest of the way, which is disheartening a little bit because what we talk about coming up next in our Off the Poll segment, where we respond to this poll question that I put out on the Locked On Phillies Twitter account. Well, if they're not adding to the outfield and they're not doing what I asked about on the Off the Poll question, well, what are the Philadelphia Phillies doing? We will discuss that and the poll question coming up next as we wrap up today's episode of Locked On Phillies. But let's talk about Gametime first because they're the best. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. One of my favorite memories was attending this concert last year. I got a chance to see, like, it was incredible. Luke Combs, so darn good. I love country music. I got those tickets through Gametime, and it was such a wonderful experience to be able to see him when he came to Philly. So when you get the opportunity to do something like that, you have to. Now Gametime's made it even easier to do so as well. To get tickets for your favorite events, they got their new feature, Gametime Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And you could find tickets to upcoming games. The Birds play a home playoff game on Sunday. Now it's going to be cold. It's going to be snowy. That's football weather. There might be people getting rid of their tickets on Gametime, and you might be able to find some really good deals, but you always do on Gametime. So go ahead and check it out. A lot of great sports going on, theater, shows, comedy, all of that stuff. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? You know it. It's Gametime. All right, so let's round out with our Off the Poll segment. So what we do in Off the Poll, if you're not familiar, I told you on Monday's episode that we were going to be bringing back some old segments. And one of those is this one, the Off the Poll segment. So I ask a poll question on Twitter from the Locked On Phillies Twitter account. That's at LO_Phillies. So if you want to go ahead and follow along, I'd appreciate it if you did so that you can see these poll questions and also respond when we do Mailbag Monday, which I'll talk about more on Friday's episode. But I'll put out the poll. I'm not going to give you my response to the poll before we do these segments, just so I don't bias anybody, so I don't make my arguments then. I want the true, unfiltered opinion of the fan base. You guys may influence me to pick a different side, and I want to be able to have a clear mind when I'm seeing the responses to the poll without having already placed an opinion out there. So with that in mind, we're going to do this in the middle episode of every week, or if we have 4 episodes, one of the middle episodes. But normally I'm going to try and do it on Wednesdays, and the poll will be put out on Mondays. So Monday I tweeted out from the Locked On Phillies account on Twitter, and I retweeted it from mine at ConnorThomas975, which if you're watching on YouTube, you can see in the graphic there. Would love to follow on both of those accounts. Our Off the Poll question for this week was, do you believe Alec Bohm will still be traded by the Phillies this offseason? And I've told you. So I guess I have kind of biased this poll a little bit already. I gave you an idea that I'm like 60-40 that he's going to be traded, or 55-45 that he's going to be traded, more likely that he will be moved than not. Well, if you take the fan base's responses to this, I may be off a little bit. 68% of responders said no, Alec Bohm is staying. Only 32% say yes, he's traded. So nearly 2/3 of the responders believe that, or actually more than 2/3, I don't know, I'm not a big math guy, about 2/3 of the responders say that Alec Bohm is going to stay with the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, I think part of that is impatience, right? I think we have this immediacy about us as sports fans, especially with a contending team, especially in the city of Philadelphia, where our goals and our expectations are so lofty all the time. And that's not a bad thing. I'm not faulting you on that. But when you get in that mode, it's I need changes now. I need results now. I need things to happen now. And if they don't happen immediately, well, they're never going to happen. And that happens. Okay. That mentality is something that happens other places. It certainly happens here in Philadelphia, where we get caught up in the moment too much. And now as things drag on, well, it feels unlikely that Alec Bohm is going to be traded, because why hasn't he by now? Or like they would have done it by now, not realizing that we're only like a little over halfway through the offseason. There's a lot of stuff that can still get done. But I think part of that is the fact that there's this impatience for the Philadelphia Phillies to make a major move, to put themselves more into championship contention, or to at least change up the cast of characters that they're going to bring back this next year to try and chase down a World Series. But the reason why that I'm still in the yes, he'll be traded part of the equation is just I think there's so much time. And I think they may have gone too far like down that road to turn around and go back now and say, well, Alec, no, we actually really, really like you. We don't have any problems with your attitude, and we want you to play third base for the Phillies. And why would we ever move you? You're the best. Come on. You got T-shirts and murals and everything like that. This city loves you. You're not going anywhere. I don't know that it's the best environment to have Alec Bohm back on this team after the way that you basically shopped him to any team that would listen. So logically, it seems to make more sense that he's moved, but as time goes by, that becomes less and less likely. I'm not saying people are wrong. I'm saying I don't share your opinion at the current time, and maybe I'm missing things. Maybe I'm trying to push for something that I'd like to see happen. I don't want Bohm traded, right? Like I was very clear when this started. I was anti-trading Alec Bohm. I don't think you're getting better if you move on from Alec Bohm, but at some point, if the organization makes it clear they're going to trade a player, be like, okay, damn, we'll do it then. Like, go ahead and get it done. Because if you're going to say you don't want me, just move me somewhere else. You see that all the time with players, right? Oh, you want to trade me? Cool, get it done. I don't care at this point. I just don't want to be here if you guys don't want me. I wonder if that's the thought process with Alec Bohm. I wonder where he's at mentally. And if you have a guy that's already on the trade block because of mentally being weak and having attitude issues, and then you make that worse, you exacerbate the situation by trying to trade him, that doesn't get done. He's got to come back. That doesn't really seem like you're putting yourself in the best situation there for either the player or the team. So that's why I say it's more likely that he's still traded, but clearly the fan base does not believe an Alec Bohm trade is happening. And let's break down what we've gone through this episode. So the backup catcher market isn't great. Rafael Marchand seems to be a better option than anybody that's available out there for a lot of reasons we broke down. The center field position is not strong, which is your hole in the outfield that you're trying to fill with either Brandon Marsh, Johan Rojas, somebody who's currently on the team, which I think those are the only two options unless you play Max Kepler there, which I don't think they will, or somebody in free agency that you go out there and acquire. Top list had Brandon Marsh as a top 6 center fielder in baseball according to MLB Network. It doesn't seem like there's many great options to go acquire out there as far as that's concerned. So that seems to be off the table. Your bullpen is pretty darn set. You could go get another big bullpen name, I guess. I think that would be fine to do. But the fan base also believes that Alec Bohm is not likely to be traded. 68% of responders to that Twitter poll said, nah, he's going to stay. So the whole idea that the Phillies may have another big move coming seems less and less likely by the day when you break down scenarios like that and you put all that together. Now, things can change in a snap, in an instant. Things could be different. But it's feeling less likely as we evaluate things. I may have been wrong when I said I think the Philadelphia Phillies are still going to have a big move in them, maybe a trade, maybe a huge signing. I'm starting to get a little nervous here, and that's why the game of chicken that you play over the offseason of like, let's wait the market out and see what can happen. It's not for the faint of heart. But a very interesting study of where the Phillies are at this offseason at a couple important positions. That is all for today's episode of Locked On Phillies. So thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate everyone who responded to that poll for the Off the Poll segment return, by the way. Please make sure you're rating, reviewing, hitting that subscribe button on the YouTube. Get you notifications when new episodes are posted. It also really helps us out. Of course, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Our next episode will be on Friday. So I will talk to you on Friday for the next episode of Locked On Phillies.